What were some of the worst experiences you have had while working in the fast food industry? I worked at Starbucks and a woman ordered her coffee at 140 degrees in the drive-thru. She walks back in the cafe after pulling out and complains that her coffee was 139 degrees because she has a thermometer in her car and she demands it be remade. I laughed at her and asked if she was joking and she demanded to see my manager. My manager remade it but I didn't get in any trouble. She was ridiculous but Starbucks policy is to remake anything if a customer asks for it. Another time there was a long wait during rush hour in the morning and I apologized to a guy that it was taking a long time to get his white mocha to him. He glared at me and yelled, "You don't really mean you're sorry," and refused to be cordial. He continued to look at me with disdain for the next few minutes. It made me super sad at the time. I really was sorry butthole. I learned not to be affected by crappy people so much as I got older. Literally had a 17-year-old kid die in my arms. I was 19 and working at KFC in a bit of a rough area. It was a quiet day shift so there were only 3 staff and no customers in the store at the time. A young couple, who looked pretty freaked up, walked in and went straight to the bathrooms. After some time, the girl came out screaming for help. She said her boyfriend had gone into the bathroom to the USH and he was not responding and was inside the locked men's room. My manager called an ambulance while I tried to get the door open. Couldn't kick it down like Chuck Norris. So I went and grabbed some tools and finally got it open. Found the kid, blue and cold on the floor. His pulse was faint. There was a syringe next to him. He had blood in his mouth so I couldn't make mouth-to-mouth contact and started administering chest compressions. The whole time his girlfriend was screaming at me to save him. I feel like I could sense the moment he had passed. The ambulance came within a few minutes but there was nothing they could do. His mother came a few days later to apologize and thank us for trying to save him. There was some police questioning and plenty of nightmares. It was been about 17 years and I still think about it often. Former firefighter, nothing gets you quite like feeling the pulse stop. A coworker came up to me and told me he was gangster. I said, "Troy, you're no gangster." He then pulls out a Glock from his waistband. TLDR, Troy is in fact a gangster and fired arrested at McDonald's. I was working at a pub shortly after college. During the evenings, things would always get pretty stressful and hectic. People would be snapping at each other, or saying mean things, or arguing, or whatever. Pretty standard stuff in a high stress situation like that. One day, though, in the middle of dinner, the other cook, my immediate manager, but not the restaurant manager, apparently just had a bad night. He'd been getting progressively more agitated all night. Not with me, luckily. Suddenly, a waitress came back and complained that one of her tables was complaining because the food was cold. First, the manager responded by telling her that if she'd come get her orders when they were done, they wouldn't be cold, but when she made some comment back, he snapped. He picked up a hot pan from the stove, and I was terrified for a second that he was going to throw it at her. Instead, he swung it as hard as he could at the entire stack of clean plates and knocked almost all of them off the table, shattering them on the floor. Then he literally tore off his apron and stormed out, but not before knocking a tray of full out of another waitress's hands. Weirdly enough, the store manager was going to let him keep his job if he'd admit being out of line. She brought him in during lunch the next day to talk to him, and instead of apologizing, he smashed a coffee cup against the wall and left. All told, it was probably for the best. I had a rough-looking guy in a beat-up truck try to use 1-year-old coupons. I refused to take them. That was a mistake. He held up the drive-thru and screamed at me, including "Smarten up, son, or you're going nowhere in life." Made me feel like crap until I realized that someone like that who is screaming those things at a 15-year running the drive-thru did not go anywhere in life. Reminds me of some lady earlier tonight at work on the phone who had a special order and demanded she get the sale price when she gets them. She was going on about how she knew how companies work because she used to be CEO. Must have been a real fall from grace to go from CEO to demanding sale price on some dang waffles. Worked at Wendy's for 2 weeks. Wasn't bad until someone spread crap all over the men's restroom and they wanted me to clean it up. It was on the ceiling, toilet, all the walls. Like someone had a poop confetti bomb. Just rubber gloves, no mask. I said frick it and quit. Someone did that to us at Kroger one time. They drew a swastika with it. I was a waitress at a pizza place and an older man and woman flagged me over and they just start yelling at me, going on and on that they found metal in their food. And she's showing me and yelling and I am trying to apologize and saying we can make you a new pizza. I am sorry. I have no idea where it came from. After several minutes of yelling the man gets quiet and he goes, "Oh, I lost a filling." Then they tried to be all nice and laugh it off. I just wanted to say screw you for treating me like crap. I never understood why people yell at waitstaff for problems with their food. They have nothing to do with making the food. This actually happened a couple of days ago. I supervise at a barbecue restaurant and the other day I had an employee get sick while on his lunch in the break room. I'm going over timesheets and out of the corner of my eye I see him run to the trash can with what looked like some sort of brown liquid in his hands and casually toss it in. I'm under the assumption that he maybe spilled his lunch in the break room and was cleaning it up. I go to investigate the situation only to hear a loud lurch followed by a loud splat onto the floor. I find said employee holding an impressive amount of vomit in his hands and all over the break room is corn tortilla scented bile. I ask if he's okay and send him to first aid to make sure he's not dying. I glove up and begin the process of clean the chunky mess that he managed to spread across the break room and doors. I also find a nice trail of vomit leading to the trash can, and despite his best efforts, only managed to get his vomit onto the side of the trash can. I just about finished cleaning the vomit and the employee comes back saying he usually feels better after a puke a lot. I'm getting ready to send him home when, surprise, he decided he wasn't done puking. He looks me in the eyes and says I think I need a trash can and vomits all over the just mopped and sanitized floor. He then runs to the only hand washing sink and decided it would be great to puke in there. I send him home and spend the rest of my shift mopping and scooping chunks of hot water and vomit from a terribly clogged sink. Hey, I wanted to be the boss, right? I worked at McDonald's part-time while I was in college. One day, I was working the drive-thru, and this guy ordered a lot of drinks. One of them was low on soda syrup, but instead of just telling me about it like a rational person so I could give him a replacement drink, he threw the extra large drink at me. Of course the lid came off and I was soaking wet. The manager, who was actually pretty good as far as fast food managers go, saw this happen. He took off running into the parking lot, flagged down the driver before he could leave, and told him to never come back. Then he came back in, found me a dry uniform shirt, and let me have a few minutes on the clock to sit in the break room and calm down. Good manager. Worked at MCD's as my first job at 15. Worst thing I probably saw was one of the guys working the fryer tripped and when he reached out to stop himself falling, he ended up with half of his hand in the fry oil. I think the entire store heard my oh crap. A similar thing happened with me at an A&W, except this dude's whole hand went into the fryer later. Dude ran over to the mud chiller sanitizer and plunged his hand right in. Quick thinking. Naked people while delivering pizza. Sounds hot in the pornos. Tends to be horrifying in real life. My first job was delivering pizzas. Some dude about my age at the time, 19, would order delivery near the end of store hours. He'd answer the door in a Home Depot apron rolled up just enough to show his dong. But I didn't mind cause he tipped good and also gave me some cold beers to enjoy after work. It was funny more than anything. I worked at a popular Canadian coffee franchise almost 10 years ago. One day, a drive-thru customer had some sort of altercation with a pair of pedestrians who had been walking through the drive-thru. The way I understand it, the customer had almost hit the pedestrians, a man and his mother, and then had started shouting. This is what I heard over the drive-thru headset. You want a face full of bicep? I'll give you a face full of bicep. I had a teenage co-worker who believed in Santa. When a mall Santa came into the store, this co-worker started looking out the windows for his sleigh. I had a teenage co-worker who asked me what a Nazi with total sincerity. When I explained what a Nazi was, the follow-up question was so, do we like them or not like them? I had a customer hurl racial insults at a co-worker because the co-worker did not butter his bagel in the manner he expected. I had a customer who requested a bagel dripping in butter, noting that she would send it back if there's not enough butter. I buttered until the butter was soaking the paper. She sent it back, quite livid. I put a burger patty worth of butter on the bagel. She opened it again, inspected it, was clearly still not satisfied, and drove away angrily. I was a car hop at Sonic Drive-In through most of high school. I was the only guy that was able to use the roller skates. An extremely creepy old man in a vehicle that might as well have been in a scrapyard called me back to his car after I started to go back inside. Gave me a $15 tip because that butt needed a second look. I had a guy overdose and die in the bathroom while managing at Carl's Jr. I was told to close the lobby but keep the drive-thru open. It was weird pooping where a dude died. Overdosing and dying in a bathroom at a fast food restaurant. What a way to leave this world. Last week, I was on the assembly line at my McDonald's, making sandwiches, when my manager ran up to me and gave me a phone, saying there was someone having a seizure in our men's bathroom. I ran into the bathroom with ketchup and grease still on my fingers to find a 60-year-old homeless man having a stroke on the floor with a bunch of blood coming out of his mouth. I sit there for 6 minutes with this dying guy while the phone with the 911 operator until finally some help arrived. Then I go back, wash my hands, and go right on back to making sandwiches. I worked at MCD's in high school. Some guy got fired and as a farewell frick you he pulled the ANSOR, which is the powder fire extinguisher system. The entire kitchen was instantly covered in fine blue powder. It was everywhere in everything. We had to shut the store and then everyone had to stay till like 3 in the morning to clean. That guy was a dong. When I worked at Subway, this guy asked for sriracha sauce on his sandwich. I put the regular amount on. Then he asks for more. I put more on. He asks for more. Eventually, he's screaming at me to put more sriracha on the sandwich, to which I end up emptying out the entire bottle on it. He's still not satisfied, so I have to get more. 1/2 bottle of sriracha later, he says it's enough. Still remember him to this day. Which he then promptly took home and refilled his own bottle. I used to work at Sonic. On rainy days, especially when it was pouring, people would intentionally park across the lot, the spare spots that weren't covered by their famous awning, and make the car hops walk the food out there to them. We'd be standing there outside their car window with the food on a tray, waiting for them to roll down their window. They'd take their sweet time getting out their cards or cash while we were getting drenched. All the while, there were plenty of open spots under the awning, closer to the restaurant and out of the rain. By the time they took their food from us, they would demand the meal for free since it was wet. Mind you, not wet enough to give back the food, just wet enough to demand a full refund while they shoved the offending fries in their mouth. Those people also never tipped. Also we had people who would make us go back inside and replace their 44 ounces drink 4 and 5 times, even when you insisted it was the right drink. This ain't diet, sir. I poured this drink myself. I can assure you it's diet. I want you to go back in there and do it again, and I better not have to send this back a 3rd time. I'll understand if you hunt them down. I worked at a place known for waffles. We actually kept our store fairly clean, so there wasn't an issue there. 2 of my favorite stories actually involved equipment breaking down. 1. You know the waffle irons? Apparently they sound like a stereo shorting when they decide to die. I worked 3rd shift, so it's nice and quiet at about 0200, and then ZZZ's boom. I nearly hit the roof. The electric outlet was sparking and on fire. Thankfully, our cook managed to get the fire out in the dang thing and plugged before it caused any real damage, but the whole place smelled like smoke and fried wires for a good day or so. 2. This is probably the worst, but even then I'm still warmed by how well our crew held together. A couple minutes after midnight on what was now New Year's Day, our dishwasher decided to journey to the giant garbage heap in the sky. Happy New Year. So we are absolutely slammed with drunk people ordering a heap of food and no working dishwasher. Frick. The entire night, as 3 servers and the 1 cook, who is the same from the first story, took shifts hauling all the dirty dishes onto a cart and running them into the back room to wash by hand in the 3-section sink. 1 part for dirty dishes, 1 for soaking washing, and 1 for drying. One of our servers was trained on the grill, so she and our cook would swap out every half hour, and even the cook was taking orders at times. Our regulars were stacking plates and acting as busboys. My own friends were wiping down tables so the people standing could sit down. The plates and bowls were being used as soon as they hit the shelves. It was a nightmare. At the end of the night, When the manager and the morning crew showed up, they got a rundown from us. The manager stared, then pointed at the back door and told us all to go take a long break before we had to do our end of shift duties. We all had that 1,000-yard stare, but dang it, we lived. We had a notice board that customers could pin their adverts on. One week we took everyone's stuff off so that we could use it as a memorial for our coworker who had just recently passed away. One customer came in and started going ballistic at us that we took her advert down. She didn't care that it was a memorial. My coworker ended up crying out the back for the rest of her shift. Worked at Brown's for a bit. Went to hand an elderly lady her ice cream cone. She took it from me, pulled her arm into her car, took a lick, and then dropped the ice cream down her door. I genuinely felt bad for her and offered to give her another one and clean it up if she would pull around. It's 100+ degrees out and I'm in full uniform. I begin wiping the side of her door when she throws a plethora of insults my way. This is why your generation is so messed up. You saw I had braces on my wrist. You knew I had arthritis. You should never have handed me that cone. You should ask if I want a cup instead. You'll probably only ever be a fast food worker. It's people like you that make everyone's life hard. She said a few more things. The heat and moment got the best of me. I threw the dirty napkins in her lap, told her to shut the frick up, reminded her I was doing her a favor, and it wasn't my fault, advised her to order correctly, and told her to clean up her own goddamn mess. I walked back inside, explained to my manager what I did, and in comes this lady playing I'm a good, sweet Christian and would never disrespect someone card. A manager told her to call corporate, but as he wasn't outside, he couldn't believe what she had to say. Not necessarily fast food, but I used to work in a bakery where our head chef had a reputation of being a great dong. Our nicknames were Stupid Frick and Dumb Frick. We had to work at an insane pace and he acted as if he was God's gift to earth. The one that stuck with me was when I made a customer a sandwich and she requested a side of avocado. Our avocados were not ripe at all. I mean, it was like plastic. I mentioned this to her and she said it was fine. So I sliced it for her and gave it to her. She calls up like an hour later complaining that her avocado was not ripe and she was unhappy. People are stupid. Does Starbucks count? A woman demanded room, space for sugar, cream, in her latte, then burst back in line demanding more room, then berated me for throwing out the ones she returned for damaging the environment because I didn't resell them, apparently, then demanded less room. Our manager ended up telling her she just had to leave because the line became enormous. Demanding more room. If only there was a way to add more empty space to a cup of liquid. Worked on a pancake stand at a concert. We had two kinds of fillings and sometimes people would ask for both at the same time. I usually just spread one on one half and the other on the other half and rolled it up so that they'd get same amount of each with each bite. 2 days in my boss sees this and absolutely flips his crap in front of some guy who at that point has been my regular customer. Apparently I was supposed to spread one kind on whole pancake and then just do little dabs with the other one. The customer said he liked pancakes the way I made them, but from that point forward I was not allowed to make them the same way. Was 15 and working for the Golden Arches in a big 2-story city location. An elderly lady came in to use the upstairs toilet and when she came back down, she had poop caked all over her hands, which she dragged down the banister she used to steady herself on down the stairs. She then went and sat at a table for a moment before leaving. She clearly had dementia, although I didn't recognize that at the time. I was sent to the bathroom to investigate the damage and it was a little crap show. I reported back to my manager, who told me I had to clean it all up. No thanks. I quit on the spot. I was not cleaning up crap for $4.85 an hour. That is hazmat cleanup, which is not in any minimum wages job description. I worked at a movie theater one semester in high school. I was scheduled as a porter, which basically means I was responsible for sweeping up the theaters between shows and throwing out trash. When I got to the back row there was a cup in the cup holder without the top on. It turned out to be filled with pee. Worked at Chick-fil-A. Woman kept saying thank you after I said my pleasure. We went round and round. Sorry, this one made laugh. I worked at my local McDonald's for 4 weeks last year. I broke my foot and sprained my ankle right before Thanksgiving. I told the store manager right after I left there, and she told me to come back after I saw my orthopedist. I did, but she was gone and a different manager told me to get a note from my doctor so I can come back to work because they needed people desperately. I got one, and a different manager took it from me, said she wasn't sure on what to do because she wasn't sure if I could work, and said she'd call me the next day. I haven't heard anything since, and it's been about a month and a half since I talked to anyone and no one has called me back. I'm sure that with all of the miscommunication, they just assumed I walked out and quit. I have a better job now. After a month, your employment is automatically terminated in most systems. Glad you got a better job, though, they're clearly incompetent. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.